She used to feel in control. Every message unanswered. Every glance you gave her. Every step you took toward her was fuel for her ego. But then, you stopped. And the silence began to speak louder than anything you'd ever said. She didn't notice it at first. The absence felt like a momentary shift, a tactic, maybe. But as the days passed and your energy never returned, a quiet panic started to creep into her chest. She had lost something, and for the first time, she couldn't name it, because what you took back wasn't your attention, it was your presence. And presence is something no apology can recreate. It's the weight of your awareness, the gravitational pull of a man who knows himself. The calm authority of someone who's rooted so deeply that no one else can shake him. That's what made her obsessed. Not your words, not your looks. Your absence, cold, clean, undeniable, held more power than her drama ever did. You didn't leave to hurt her, you left to find you. And in doing so, you became the one thing she never expected, a man she couldn't reach. Not because you blocked her, not because you punished her, but because you no longer revolved around her. And the moment your orbit changed, her universe cracked. That's when she realized she was never the center. She was just loud enough to distract you from your center. This is what happens when a stoic man retreats. He doesn't disappear to provoke. He disappears to realign. He doesn't ghost. He evolves. And evolution has no room for the games that once hypnotized him. You started waking up earlier, training harder, thinking clearer. Not to move on from her, but to move deeper into yourself. And the more you did, the more her image faded. Not out of spite, but out of proportion. You saw who she really was, a mirror, not a home. And now she feels it. Every laugh she once dismissed, every truth you once held back, every ounce of strength you poured into her validation, it's gone. And what's left behind isn't bitterness, it's silence, the type that rattles the soul. Because she can't fix what she broke, and she can't chase what no longer looks back. She asks mutual friends. She watches old stories. She scrolls and searches and replays your last words in her mind like a riddle, but there's no answer, because you're not playing anymore. You're building, you're ascending. You're doing exactly what she thought was impossible for you, thriving without her. And that's when obsession takes root. When the man she thought she could control becomes the man she can't forget. Not because you're cruel, but because you're gone. Not just physically, mentally, spiritually. You detached so deeply that even if she returned, she'd only find the echo of who you used to be. And echoes don't respond, they just remind. You became the contrast. In a world full of valid and men desperate for attention, you became the quiet storm. The one who doesn't beg. The one who doesn't explain. The one who simply moves in silence and lets the consequences speak. You didn't fight to keep her, you fought to keep yourself. And now that you've won that battle, you see it all with clarity. Her confusion is her own. Her regret is hers to carry. You've outgrown the emotional tug-of-war she used to win, because you no longer need to win her back. You already won when you walked away without leaving yourself behind. She didn't know silence could hit this hard. She always assumed your attention was infinite, your time negotiable, your loyalty guaranteed. She never realized the presence of a stoic man is a privilege, not a given. And now, as she stares at a screen that no longer lights up with your name, she's forced to face the truth. You weren't addicted to her, you were patient with her, and patience runs out when growth begins. The man who once gave without limit is now giving to himself. And that's the scariest version of you she's ever seen. Because self-sufficient men are dangerous. Not because they hurt others, but because they don't need them. Your silence isn't punishment, it's evolution. It's the sound of a man who no longer trades peace for attention, nor identity for connection. You've transcended the emotional economy she used to dominate. Where others paid with validation, you now invest in solitude. Where others plead for closure, you find power in discipline. Where others follow emotions, you lead them. The shift wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, surgical. You started responding slower, thinking deeper, caring less about her moods and more about your mission. She noticed the difference, but mistook it for distance. She thought space would make you miss her more, but it made you meet yourself. And once a man meets his deeper self, he doesn't go back to chasing shallow attachments. He doesn't settle for energy that drains. He demands alignment. And alignment is rare. Now she's searching for signs, wondering what went wrong, asking herself questions she never thought she'd ask. Why isn't he chasing? Did I lose him forever? How did he change so fast? But the truth is, you didn't change, you remembered. You remembered your value, your boundaries, your peace. You remembered that love isn't sacrifice. It's synergy. And the moment you realized she wasn't moving with you, you stopped moving toward her. That's the moment obsession begins. When a woman sees that she's no longer the sun, but a distant star you once admired, now fading in your rear view, she doesn't want your validation anymore. She wants your mystery. The mystery of how you became so still, so solid, She craves the feeling of being near a man who doesn't flinch, doesn't chase, doesn't lose himself trying to be loved. That kind of man doesn't show up often. And when he leaves a hole no one else can fill. She replays memories, like warnings, the way you used to look at her, the way you listened, the way you spoke with purpose, never wasting breath on things that didn't matter. At the time, she thought it was intensity. Now she knows it was depth. And depth is terrifying to people who only swim on the surface. She tried to test you with distance, but didn't expect you to pass. Now she's the one drowning in the space she created. But you're not angry. You're not even disappointed. You've moved past emotional turbulence. You're watching your own life unfold like a man watching fire from a mountaintop, calm, aware, in control. And that calmness, it drives her insane. Because drama was her anchor. Conflict was her comfort. Now that you've given her neither, she has to sit with herself. And she doesn't like what she sees without your light shining on her. That's the beauty of Stoic psychology. You don't fight to be seen, you become undeniable. You don't scream to be heard, your silence roars. You don't chase love, you embody it. And when you do, the world and the women in it adjust to your gravity. They orbit you, not because you force them to, but because your energy demands it. You become the center not by claiming it, but by commanding it through who you are. She used to be the storm. Now you're the stillness that makes her tremble. She used to lead the dance. Now you don't dance, you stand. And in that stillness, in that presence, you radiate the one thing she's been chasing her whole life. A man who cannot be moved. A man who doesn't just react, he responds. A man who leads not with volume, but with vision. And while she scrambles for attention, you build. While she regrets, you refine. While she waits, you win. Not out of revenge, not out of pride, but out of principle. Because the Stoic man doesn't compete. He completes himself. And once complete, he becomes a mirror to the world, exposing the hollowness in others and the power within himself. Your absence taught her more than your presence ever could. Because presence can be faked, absence can't. She knows now that she touched something rare, something real, and that memory will follow her. In the quiet moments, in the arms of others, in the mirrors she avoids. She remembered the man who didn't just walk away, but rose while doing it. And you'll keep rising. You'll keep building. Because this isn't about her anymore. It never really was. She was just the trigger, the fire, the catalyst, the test. And you passed. You didn't just survive the silence, you became it. And in doing so, you became unforgettable. Now that you've reclaimed your silence, everything feels different. The same streets you walked with her feel wider. The air feels lighter. Not because you've lost her, but because you've shed the weight of needing her. That was never love. That was dependence, dressed up as connection. And once a man walks out of that illusion, he doesn't return, because the path forward is lined with clarity, purpose, and power. You no longer need to be understood by her. You're too focused on becoming unshakable for the next storm life throws your way. And that's the shift she didn't expect. She thought your worth was tied to her approval. She never realized that her presence was tolerated, not essential. Now she knows. Now she feels it. That cold clarity in your eyes, if she ever dares to come back. That grounded posture in your body when she mentions the past. That stillness in your voice that tells her, without a word, that you've changed, and she's not part of that future. This is what Stoic power does. It evolves so far that the past becomes irrelevant, and the people in it become lessons, not anchors. There will be moments where she tries to break the silence. A message, a subtle like, a memory sent out like a fishing line, but you won't bite. Not because you hate her, but because you've outgrown the bait. You don't go back to what broke you just because it wants you now. You understand timing. And you know that anyone who didn't value you in your presence doesn't deserve access to your peace in your absence. This is what sets the Stoic man apart. He doesn't need to scream his worth. He lets time reveal it. While she wrestles with regrets, you continue stacking your wins. New habits, new standards, new levels. And the higher you rise, the smaller her world feels. Because now she realizes what she let go of. Not a man who begged, but a man who built. A man who leads himself. a man whose calm became louder than her chaos. She will tell herself stories. That you changed too fast. That you never cared. That maybe you were always cold. But deep down, she knows. You were fire. She just tried to smother it. And now that you burn for yourself, she's drawn to the warmth she no longer controls. That's the paradox of power. The less you give it away, the more people crave it, and she is no exception. Her pride won't let her admit it, but her eyes will. Her silence will. Her late-night thoughts will. And yet, you don't need any of that. You're not waiting for a sign. You're not hoping she returns. You're not trying to be missed. You're becoming undeniable to yourself. That's the real obsession. When a man gets addicted to mastering his mind, nothing else compares. The drama fades. The noise dissolves. And all that's left is momentum. Clean, focused, relentless momentum. Toward purpose. Toward peace. Toward legacy. You were never here to chase affection. You were here to build discipline. To refine presence. To embody leadership. And now, you don't just speak differently, you move differently. Every step you take without her echoes in her world. Not because you're flaunting anything, but because she never imagined a version of you that wouldn't crawl back. And that version, it's who you are now. Fully formed, fully focused. She once ignored your presence, thinking it was hers to command. Now she lives with your absence, and it's the only thing she can't control. That's the balance of the Stoic life. Let the world come and go, but never let it shake your core. Let people love you, lose you, misunderstand you, but never let them define you. You are not the reaction. You are the constant. You are the calm force moving forward, no matter what burns behind you. And this is the truth she never unsee. That you never needed to raise your voice. You just needed to raise your standards. That you never needed to chase her. You just needed to chase purpose. And now that you do, nothing can hold you back. Not old flames. Not old wounds. Not even the echo of her name. This is your era. And she's just a page. You're the one writing the book now. In silence. In focus. In power. She thought you would orbit forever. That no matter how far she pushed, you'd still circle back. But you were never a satellite. You were the sun. You gave light until you realized you were burning for someone who only wanted the glow, never the heat. And the day you stopped giving, the temperature dropped in her world. That cold isn't your punishment. It's her consequence. A consequence of treating strength like it was disposable. Of assuming your patience meant dependence. Of confusing your loyalty with weakness. Now she knows the difference. Your energy no longer leaks through texts, calls, or desperate conversations. It flows inward. Into every rep you hit when your body screams to stop. Into every early morning you rise without a word. Into every chapter you write in solitude. You've become a fortress. Not impenetrable because you're hard, but because you've healed. You no longer seek comfort in others. You became the source. And she feels that shift like a void. Not because you were her everything, but because you were the only thing real. She tests your new self. Maybe not directly. Maybe through whispers. Through mutual friends. Through quiet digital signals. But you won't blink. You're too grounded to react. Too elevated to fall. And the more she tries to pull you back into the version of you that once depended on her approval, the more she realizes that man no longer exists. You didn't just disappear. You transformed. You built a new frequency. One she no longer has the key to. And it haunts her. Because now, every man she meets is measured against your silence. Every conversation echoes your presence. Every game she plays feels empty because you're not playing anymore. She's in a field built for drama, and you're out hunting purpose. That contrast is deafening. That stillness is unforgettable. And the man who doesn't need her, truly doesn't need her, is the one she can never stop thinking about. She used to be the center of your focus. Now your focus has a mission. It has muscle. It has momentum. You're learning new skills. You're making quiet moves. You're building a reality that doesn't include her name. And that's not bitterness. That's evolution. You don't hate her. You simply refuse to shrink. For someone who never saw your full size, you don't post cryptic quotes. You don't drop hints. You don't seek closure. Because the Stoic man doesn't speak in code. He speaks in action. And your action is absence. Not just physically, but energetically. You've reclaimed the space where her drama once lived and filled it with discipline. Where her approval once dictated your worth. Now your standards do. And no one, especially her, gets past them without earning it. This is the quiet revenge of the man who chooses growth. Not hurting her back, but never needing her again. That's the wound she can't heal from. Because it doesn't leave a scar, it leaves a mirror. And every time she looks into it, she sees what she lost. Not just a man, but a future that required her to rise. And she wasn't ready. She wanted to be desired, not challenged. Worshipped, not witnessed. But you don't worship chaos anymore. You mastered your peace. And peace doesn't bargain. She'll say you changed. She say you became cold. But the truth is, you stopped bleeding for someone who never offered a bandage. You stopped hoping that someone else would validate your worth. Now, you validate yourself through every disciplined choice, through every boundary you uphold, through every time you choose purpose over impulse. And this choice, over and over again, creates a gravity stronger than any game she could ever play. That's why she still thinks about you. Why her friends hear your name when she drinks. Why her next partner feels more like a placeholder than a person. Because you didn't just walk away, you became the standard. And standards, once set, don't lower. They rise. And so do you. She's now surrounded by men who speak loud, move fast, and promise everything. But none of them move like you. None carry that weightless authority. None sit in silence and make the room tense without raising their voice. Because most men are noise, you became the signal. While they flood her DMIs, you flooded your mind with discipline. While they react to every curve, you learned to curve every impulse. That's the power she underestimated. The man who has control over himself controls everything. She used to think the opposite of love was hate. Now she realizes it's indifference. Your silence doesn't just confuse her, it exposes her. It makes her question her own worth. Because for the first time, she's invisible to a man who once saw everything in her. That reflection is brutal. And no, you're not doing it to hurt her. But pain has a way of following truth. And the truth is, she mistook your depth for need. Now she's drowning in a sea of men who only swim shallow. What haunts her most is the fact that you never retaliated. You never played her game. You never begged. You just vanished into your own growth. That kind of disappearance doesn't feel like loss. It feels like judgment. Like a silent verdict that she wasn't enough to hold the man she once had the power to break. And that verdict echoes every time she scrolls through your old conversations, hoping to feel something that's already burned away. She thought the distance would give her leverage. That your mind would spiral, trying to decode her silence. But you didn't spiral. You ascended. Every unread message was a push-up. Every ignored call was another chapter finished. Every delay was a lesson. And now, while she stares at the void where your attention used to live, you're building empires in places she can't follow. And no, you're not colder now. You're cleaner. You cleaned your circle. You cleaned your habits. You cleaned your thinking. She mistook warmth for weakness. She'll never make that mistake again. Because your current is untouchable. It moves through time with precision. Through people with discernment. Through emotion. With control, you no longer react. You recalibrate. And the man who recalibrates becomes impossible to manipulate. What she used to take for granted is now sacred. Your time, your energy, your presence. You don't give those things easily anymore. Not because you're guarded, but because you're guided. And that shift in posture, that spiritual straightening of your spine, that's the kind of change she can feel, even without seeing you. The kind of change that radiates, that intimidates, that captivates. There's a new weight to your steps. Not the weight of pain, but of purpose. And she feels that weight pressing on her mind every time she wonders, what if I hadn't pushed him away? But that question has no answer now. Because the man she pushed away isn't the one she'd find if she came back. That man died in the fire she started. And what rose from the ashes is someone she was never ready for. You no longer fantasize about what could have been. You focus on what will be. You see past the curve of her body and into the shape of your legacy. And legacy doesn't flirt. It doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It moves forward with ruthless precision. That's the mindset that separates you now from her. From the man you were, and from the noise of the world, trying to pull you off course. She'll keep watching, quietly, indirectly, but always watching. Because men like you don't just disappear from their lives, you echo in them. In their standards, in their regrets, in their inability to connect with anyone who hasn't stared into the fire of solitude and come out more composed, not more damaged. And while she's haunted by possibilities, you're building realities. Realities where your energy isn't wasted, where your peace isn't disturbed, where your power doesn't need permission. That's not arrogance, that's arrival. You've arrived at a level where validation feels like noise and alignment feels like home. You no longer live in reaction, you live in rhythm. While others respond to every message, every silence, every emotion she throws their way. You remain still, not because you don't feel, but because you've learned how to command what you feel. That's the art the Stoic man masters. Not emotional repression, but emotional transmutation. You don't deny pain, you repurpose it into progress, into presence, into power. And now she's left facing the result of that process. A man whose value is no longer negotiable. This is the final test most men fail. The moment when she returns, either directly or through signals, expecting a piece of the old you. And most will fold. They'll interpret attention as love, nostalgia as connection, and slip right back into the same dynamic they once fought to escape. But not you. You've seen too much. You've grown too far. You've tasted the peace that comes with not being needed, and once you know that peace, you protect it like a crown. Because it's not just about her anymore. It's about everything you built in the silence she once created. You've become a different species to her now. Not cold, not cruel, just ... elevated. And that elevation isn't loud. It's undeniable. It's in your posture, in your eyes, in how you move with fewer words but more meaning, in how you're no longer waiting for the world to validate your steps, because every step is planted in self-leadership. That's what separates the man who's healed from the one who hides his wounds behind performance. You don't need to be seen. You need to be aligned. And you are. She may whisper that she misses you, that she didn't mean to push you away, that she finally understands. But by then, it's not about her understanding. It's about your direction. You're not the same man who wanted her back. You're the man who walked forward and realized that what he truly wanted was himself, whole, quiet, immovable. And once you meet that version of you, no relationship is worth losing him again. The world will keep throwing distractions dressed as desire, but you see through them now. Because real power isn't found in who chases you. It's found in what you no longer chase. She was never the test. She was the mirror. And in her silence, you met yourself. You faced your shadows. You endured the weight of not being wanted. And you turned it into the strength of not needing to be. That's the hidden gift in being ignored by someone you gave everything to. You learn what's left when everything is gone. And what's left, if built with discipline and truth, is everything you ever needed. You don't look back with anger. You look back with clarity. She didn't break you. She built you without knowing it. And now, the price of access to your world is higher than she ever afford again. You walk different now. Not just with confidence, but with conviction. Not just with presence, but with peace. You know who you are. You know what you stand for. And that certainty is louder than any text she could send, any apologies she could make, any regrets she could express. Because now, she's trying to connect with a man who's no longer reachable from where she's standing. This isn't revenge. This is revelation. The final chapter isn't about her regret. It's about your rebirth. It's about stepping into the man you were always meant to be. The one who doesn't break when ignored, but sharpens. The one who doesn't wait for love, but walks in purpose. The one who doesn't seek validation, but radiates value. So when she looks back, and she will let her see the man who vanished with grace and returned with power. Let her see the silence she once weaponized, now forged into armor. Let her feel the absence she once created, now haunting her as the greatest what-if of her life. And you don't look back anymore. Because forward is the only direction that matches your energy now. Forward is where your kingdom is being built. Forward is where the world will feel the weight of the man who didn't just survive heartbreak, he alchemized it. She ignored your presence. Now she's obsessed with your absence, and you're finally home.